Welcome to what happened on Saturday with Marlon Kerner. Marlon, how you doing?
Josh, I am well. How about you?
I am great. I just shared with you. I'm having a beer. It's a 5-day weekend. You have generously changed our names. It is
Absolutely.
usually Saturday with Marlon on Twitter, and obviously your name is not Xarlin Kerner, but this
Yeah,
week, this week is the week, and
it is
we're
the
gonna
week.
get in. We're gonna get into the college football rankings. They just came out. You texted me the other day with a great call on Washington leapfrogging Florida State. I definitely want to get into that with you in a little bit. Two things. First of all, what do you think the get-in price is right now on StubHub for the cheapest seat for that team up north and Ohio State? What is the cheapest ticket on StubHub right now?
I may have already saw this on Twitter. I think it was like $1,200, like
Twelve hundred and
12.
fifty-one dollars.
Yeah, it was crazy. There's no way I'm going to pay $1,200 for that game. I still enjoy the comfort of my home and sitting on the couch and making my
Have
own
you
snacks and doing my own rituals for that game.
have you ever been to the game as a fan?
Never as a fan. No. Too much pressure. Well, I'm not gonna say too much pressure, just life early, young kids. So
Mhm.
trying to get back for the game was just a little crazy. And I think I'm at a good stage where I may try to get back next year. I want to be a part of that tunnel. They have that great tradition of bringing back all the former players to make a tunnel for
Mm.
home games where the players can run out of. And I want to make sure I get to be a part of that at least one time while I'm still able to run around and walk and yell, "Go Bucks," and
Absolutely.
do all that scarlet and wear that scarlet and gray.
Oh, that'd be a lot of fun. All right, so second question here before we get started on our weekly recap and look ahead to the game. We're gonna have Jay Remersma, your friend, for Michigan alum,
Yeah,
former Bills tight
former
end,
teammate. Yeah.
former teammate, really good, NFL career. Everybody around Buffalo knows who he is. Excited he's going to come on. He's going to give us the perspective of the other side of the coin for this weekend's matchup. I just kind of wanted to pick your brain a little bit for people listening to us, maybe for the first time. What is this week like? As soon as the game ends, last week you talk about a countdown clock. When you were a captain, just take me back to when you were there, and maybe to what the guys are experiencing this week. Like what is this whole week like being a player on the Buckeyes?
So this game is everything. When you grow up in Columbus and then you go on and you play football at Ohio State, you understand the rivalry because I've seen so many of these games, but you understand the magnitude and what this game means. And so it should be, and I'm glad it's like this. I know we joked and we talked about would I be rooting for that team up north last week, and I said absolutely because I grew up in a time where this game meant everything. It didn't matter if you had 3 losses throughout the season. If you won this game, you weren't on the hot seat. Like, you were okay as long as you had a winning record against that team up north. And for anybody that's wondering why I say the team up north, like, we don't say anything with the letter
Michigan.
M. So that's
Okay.
why it says X on it. It's Zarlan. If you want to call me Zarlan for this week, that's fine. I couldn't change it to make a red X because that's what we normally do, just put a red X on it. And you go through and you get rid of all the letter M's and the anything that you can see. So that's why our name has changed. But every now you understand what this is about. So now you're going through thinking, okay, now what do I have to do? You're coming up with the game plan. You're watching your game film as normal with the prep, but then you have the added pressure of, especially this team, added pressure of knowing that they've won the last 2 games. So you're going to make sure that everything you're doing is as used to routine as possible. But there's a little extra motivation because you want to go out, especially if you're a senior. You want to make sure that you get that last victory. I left them upstairs. I'll bring them on. I'll make sure when we have Jay Reamer's come on that I'll show them that what you get with us if you win this game is you get a pair of gold pants. And you
Okay.
may have seen images floating around on Twitter, but that is what Ohio State gives you is you get gold pants, you put the score of the game, and that's it. So when you win, you get them. And so there are some guys that have 4 pairs of gold pants. I was not in that. I wish I could have been in there, but I was lucky enough to get a pair of them. And so when you think about the tradition of this game, Troy Smith recently, and the guys that played in it, and David Boston and Eddie George, and even more recently when you start going back to Zeke, and then you start talking about everyone else, all the great quarterbacks that played in it, and CJ from last year, and having 2 losses against them. And then when you think about Justin Fields and his victories against them, and JT Barrett having never lost a game against them, the magnitude of what this game means it's amazing. And I think as college football has gotten more and more popular and the money has changed, and that the way they look at things with NIL now, and then even just with the way the rankings in the college football playoffs are set up, like this game means everything because winner really does control all. Winner wins all. You control your own destiny. You have a great chance of getting that one of the 4 seats in the college football playoff system, and you're going to go on and play Iowa in the Big Ten championship. So I love it. 11-0, 11-0, both ranked 2 and 3 respectively. It's everything that you want in a showdown, and then you have all the other things around it. You think about, Harbaugh's not going to be there, and again, they've won 2 years, and they've got this allegations of they've done some things that they shouldn't have done. But we'll let the NCAA figure that out, right? Like this game matters. It doesn't matter. I read some of the messages on Twitter. I hate to say it, but I laugh because there's this belief among the team up north fan bases that Ohio State doesn't want to play this game, right? Like Ohio State's doing everything in their power to make sure, because they're like, this is the best team that Michigan that we've ever had, right? So you're scared to play. Like, no, Ohio State is not ducking you guys. Ohio State is going to be ready to play. It's going to be a very physical thing. I think about David Boston and Charles Woodson going at it years ago. It's going to be that type of environment. These two teams don't like each other.
When you were there, did you hate Michigan?
You were cool with I you wanted them to be undefeated going into that game. Obviously it just the cards of how when we played it wasn't like that. Neither one of us were we were undefeated. We had one tie coming in my junior year, and so that was like everything was on the line for that. Like if you win that game, you go to the Rose Bowl, because when I grew up, it was the Rose Bowl. That was what the prize was. The winner of that game wins the Big Ten. You go and you play in the Rose Bowl, and then the AP sorts it out and says this is the number 1 team, this is the number 2 team. Now it's everything, because you're just kind of thinking like, wait a minute, like what is this? It's everything on the line. And so when I think about this, like, we hated them when we played them. It was one of those that rivalry of you're my rival, I can't stand you. Now I wish you well. I don't want to see you get injured. I want to play, because you always want to say I beat the best. I never wanted to play a team shorthanded. I didn't want to hear the excuses of, well, if we had our quarterback, this would have happened. It would have been different. So you want them at their full strength. You want everything ready to go, which I'm loving to hearing that everyone's going to be at full strength. Ohio State's going to have their best team. That team up north will have all their players. They'll just be missing their coach, right? And so that's going to be what it's going to be. That'll be the narrative of all week long. Like, how will they respond without their head coach at the helm?
How many of those guys did you know personally? I'm assuming a bunch of you guys got recruited, to the same schools, same circles. Did you know a lot of those guys when you played them?
A few of them, you kind of get to know guys. You watch film, but luckily for me, I would have never taken that trip up there. so
okay,
I wasn't worried about.
You grew up in Columbus, right? So
right? I was not taking that visit. There was not. It was never going to happen with me going up there. And I remember getting the letter from them, like, we hear you're a fantastic student athlete, and I'm like, yeah, it's a nice thing to put on the wall that says I got a recruiting letter, but there's no way I'm going to take that visit whatsoever. I never considered going there at all.
That's funny. So, Saturday, you win. Ohio State wins the game against Minnesota. The game ends Sunday morning. Obviously, probably a rest day for the players. Is practice different that week? Are the coaches different? Is everything just amped up? Is it like
everything's going to be amped up? Yep. You know how we always joke when we do that little coaches,
the pucker meter. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's intense. Like, you're making sure your checks are right. Like, the magnitude of this game and everything that will happen and the fallout from it if you lose a third one. So you're going to make sure you're prepared for everything. Like the practice, the way you move, and the intensity is going to be ramped up a little bit. But coaches always try to make sure they try to dial it down towards the end of the week, right? Because you're going to be amped up, but you don't want to get too high early in the week, because you don't want to be emotionally spent by the end of the week. So you want to make sure you do it right. So coaches, it's the coach's job. And then most coaches do a good job of, all right, we understand what this is about. you're talking about it, why we're going to be doing this, what this means, how you have your own and you can control your own destiny. You do all those things, but you also make sure, like, hey, listen, dial it down, right? Like, make sure you get your sleep, make sure you're eating right. Like, we're going to make sure you're doing everything you're supposed to, go to class the way you're supposed to, don't stay up late. Like, you're really going to make sure you're enforcing all those things and making sure that guys are doing everything that they're supposed to be doing this week in particular. And so it's going to be you make sure that everyone's following the same regimen that you tried to do in the past. But this week is really more important because you want everybody rested. The game's at noon, so Ohio State's had a couple games like that. But lately they had a few games that were later in the afternoon, 4 o'clock. So your preparation is a little different. So you're going to do all those things to make sure that you're mentally prepared, physically prepared to go. And then now you just say, I'm going to turn you loose. So I'm a slow, normal routine, kind of get you ramped up. And then I could see them, light pads, even if no pads at this week, toward the end of the week, like, hey, with no pads at all, I want you fresh, I want you light, I want you ready to go. And you've been practicing. You probably, because I remember Urban Meyer talked about how he always practiced for this game. There was always a little segment of this, what we're going to do when we run here. So if you still kept that tradition in, then you already kind of know what the game plan is, how you're going to attack them, how you're going to do certain things in there. So it should be a fun game, it's one of those games where it could be really close. It could be something where it's a 17-14 games, or you could just see one of the teams either or just explode and go off. And so I'm hoping it's my alma mater that explodes and goes off. But
yeah, sure.
It's one of those games where it can go. I think it's a tough-nosed physical game, but you make a mistake here and there. That's the thing. You really want to make sure mentally you understand how you want to attack, what plays they try to run when you get in this formation on defense, how they're going to attack you on defense when you get in a specific formation on offense, making sure you understand the reads as when you talk about Kyle McCord, at being that this is his first game that he's going to be taking all the reps in. So you just make sure you have all the kind of those mental reps going and making sure you understand all the side adjust, everything that you would think of in a normal game. It's more magnified in this game. So you want to this is where legends in the community, like this is like where legends are made. You can really come in and be like, listen, this guy had four tackles for a loss against the team up north, like really put and turned it around and did some things in that game to help us win it. So this is where you can kind of make a legend for yourself and a name for yourself just by playing well in this game.
All right, I got 3 more for you before we pivot back to this week, and then we'll obviously, with our second show on Friday, we'll dive more into this from the other side. First question: are the coaches, the GAs, the quality control guys, are they working on the team up north game all year? Are you having practice periods throughout the year, even in summer, just for Michigan?
I personally didn't. I don't remember, and it's been a long time, but I don't remember us having like a specific period that just worked on their plays all year long. I think it would have been helpful, and I like when coaches say this is what we're going to do because this is what this is all about, and so it's pretty cool. But I know some coaches that have done that, and I'm sure Urban Meyer and Ryan Day probably still keep that same approach of always working. Hey, these are the plays that they run. This is what they want to do. This is this period. This is how we do certain things so that you kind of understand what they do and why they do what they do. And you kind of keep that rivalry going. And so to speak, and I think that's kind of where the intensity of the rivalry really picked up is when Jim Tressel got in and he had 6 or 7 straight wins against them, never lost a game against them. And then Urban Meyer came in and had 6, 7 wins against him as well. So there was a nice long stretch where Ohio State just won and they were very dominant in crucial matters in this series. And so I was on the other side of it. And so I think when you think about and you hear about what some of the other coaches have done, I'm like, oh man, that would have been a really good idea to use against us. But we were able to help jumpstart Coach Cooper's victory, one of 2 victories against that team up north. So I was fortunate to kind of figure that out and be a part of that and get those goals.
Sure. Second question: how does Thanksgiving play in? How does Thanksgiving look for you? Because obviously this game is always the Saturday of Thanksgiving weekend. What does it look like for the players? When you're a student athlete there, did most of the guys be able to hang out with their family at all, or is it just another day like it is in the NFL?
You still had certain things. If I remember correctly, I think we got to spend some time with our family on Thanksgiving. So instead of having a Sunday off, I want to say we came in and practiced that Sunday and then changed the day off so you could spend some time with your family. I would imagine Nowadays, they probably don't get that day off. You probably come in early, get an early practice in, and then go and spend time with your family or coaches, depending on where you're from. I always got to hang out with my family, so I always had a little bit of dinner, and then I would go back home and go to my apartment, go to my dorm, depending on when it happened. But my senior year, went back to my apartment, hung out, and that was it. And you just get ready for the game. Like you come back, like I'm not out too late. I'm just going to eat a little bit of food, hang out with my family and friends, and then go home. And then you go back and you're like, I'm ready to go for this game. I need to be focused for this game.
What time would you leave Columbus on Friday to go up to Ann Arbor?
It depends. Every coach kind of has their own thing. I remember one year we bussed up there, so that was not as fun as you think it might be, because it's like a 3.5 hour drive. The way we went through it, so I was like, I don't know about this. So you just kind of pack. We were all dressed in our. I want to say it was my junior year. We were all dressed in our kind of our same warm ups. We had our red warm up suits on, and we kind of you get your headphones, you get everything you need to make sure you're ready for that game, and then we sat on a bus for the 3.5 4 hours. We got there. We did what we went to the hotel, and then we came up there and got ready for the game. But if you're leaving, generally some coaches would kind of get together. It just depends on if you want to have dinner together as a team beforehand, which I've done both before, where we say we're going to have dinner when we get to the hotel, and so we would fly out early. I've had other games where we stayed and we said, you know what, we're going to have dinner early and then go from the dinner to the airport and then get to where we're going at about 6:30, 7 o'clock at night, get off the plane and then go right to the hotel, do our last meetings and get ready for bed, and get ready for the game the next day. So I'm good with either or, but this game is special. So I would imagine that they're going to leave normal time. They'll probably leave around 4. Will be where they will probably get in, because you kind of always come in on a Friday. You go through all the last walkthroughs, so you'll come in and say, okay, here's what we're going to do. Here's what we really messed up the most this week. Let's make sure we button down these plays, guys. When they get into formation, we need to make sure we make this check, right? You go over all the last little minute things that you made mistakes on, that you want us to make sure that you adjust and make sure guys understand how they're supposed to perform on both the offensive and defensive side of the ball. Then your shower, you'll get dressed in your suit and tie, and then you'll all come out and be on buses ready to go. And so my guess would be they would go straight to the airport, police escort to the airport, hop on your private charter, and then get bused straight to your hotel, where they
That's
would
a
probably
quick
have
flight, right?
Quick
45-minute flight.
Yeah, so they'll get there early.
Interesting. All right, last one. What is it like playing at the Big House? Any memories?
It's crazy when you get there. It's a huge stadium, and so you start thinking like, wow, this is pretty cool. You think about the history of that stadium and everything that you see as a kid growing up and watching some of your favorite players, like growing up when I was looking at Chris Carter and some of the things that he's able to do against them and some of the catches that he made. And so you always look at this game because that's the game that is always like the bragging rights, and there's a lot of that team up north fans that somehow reside in Columbus. So there's always houses that are divided. I'm a Buckeye. No, I'm a Wolverine fan. And so you want bragging rights for the entire year. And so you kind of think about all those things. And then you go there and like, okay, I understand the history. I understand why this rivalry is so important. And growing up and seeing footage of Woody and seeing Bo and how they approach the game. So you think about all those things. And then you think about where your place is. You understand, like, I'm a part of a history that has been, and a part of a rivalry that has been so long. And now you get to kind of like, how am I remembered for my play? And so really you just kind of think about all those things, and then you have to go back and play. And so we ended up losing. And that's where I was thinking about, we didn't play well at all. We were 10-0-1. And we had all the opportunity to be 11-0-1 and go and play in the Rose Bowl. And we just really we got out physical that game. I remember that because just the way they attacked us, they were able to hit some long runs on us, and then they hit a deep ball on us and cover 3 right on the other side. Ran from one end, opposed from one side to the other side, and got a deep ball on us. And offensively, we weren't able to handle what they were able to do. And so I always remember those things. But just you're just
Sure.
like, man, like the tradition, and then you're like, man, we didn't play our best, and
Is it
that's the sad
loud?
thing. You want to make sure
Is it
it can get loud. Yeah, it can
is
definitely
it
get
is it
loud.
you've played it at Happy Valley, you've played in Wisconsin.
It
There's
didn't
pretty
remind me of being in Happy Valley, like Happy Valley loud. Like that was a crazy loud, and I remember that just because how we just got. It was not a good game there when we went there, but that was just one of those things where you're just like, man, like it wasn't as loud. It didn't remind me of being as loud as being at home.
okay.
But their fan base definitely cheered, but you understood what it was all about. Like you understand, the names that you're going to be called. You understand how
Sure.
their fans, the boos that you're going to get. You understand
How
all
was the
those
bus
things that
ride
come
in?
along
How
with
was
it.
the bus ride in? How was the bus ride in?
I don't remember seeing anything, no double fingers. It wasn't like the
Okay.
Jets or anything like
Okay.
that. But
Sure.
I mean, hey, their fans like boo, like here you go,
Or
and
here.
they're in there,
Or
and they're in
here.
there, yeah. So it's just kind of what like it was one of those, you understood the history. I tried to pay attention to it, but I had my headphones on. I was just trying to make sure I try to stay locked in, and you're trying to think of what you need to do to be prepared for that game, because you understand, hey, you know what, we control our own destiny. Like, that was what you're thinking. Like, we control our own destiny. If we come in here and take care of business, and do what we're supposed to do, we can definitely, come out and say, okay, we could be 11-0-1 and just be like, all right, here we go. And we ended up being, when we left, 10-1-1. And so that was not where we were going, what we
Sure.
wanted to have happen.
Sure. Well, I look forward to to revisiting this, obviously, on Friday with Jay Remersma, Michigan tight end. We're going to kind of get his perspective of the rivalry, and then maybe you and he can kind of give each other a little bit of shit before before the game.
Absolutely.
One funny story from my perspective on this game, being neutral to this until starting this podcast with you. I'll admit I'm going to cheer for Ohio State on Saturday, maybe for the first time, just because of our show and our relationship. And I've grown to enjoy and cheer for what you cheer for. Back in 2006, I've shared a little bit about my dad and where my passion for college football came. Back in 2006, the last time, I believe it was 1-2, the real big Michigan Ohio State game, noon Eastern. So we decided to go to a Buffalo Wild Wings to watch the game. And my dad went to a small college in like I talked with Jeff Burris, a small college in New Hampshire. Their sister school was Notre Dame. He adopted Notre Dame as his team. He had some challenges with mental illness throughout his life. So Notre Dame became really an obsession of his. Well, we go to this Wild Wings, Marlon, and at the same time that that Ohio State Michigan game of the decade is on, Notre Dame is also playing Navy. Noon Eastern, 2006, Charlie Weiss era, not must-see TV, okay?
Right,
Notre Dame was,
right.
I think, 6-5, whatever it was. Well, the manager of the Wild Wings made the mistake of putting the Ohio State-Michigan game on the big projection screen with the sound. My father confronted the manager at Wild Wings and explained to him that God himself wanted Notre Dame Navy to be on the big screen. Now, I could have crawled in a hole at about 11:55 Eastern because I'm like, Dad, nobody else is here to watch Notre Dame Navy. Well, I had to take my father home, God rest his soul, and then I came back to watch the rest of the game. That was how the corner TV where Notre Dame Navy, frankly, deserved to be in 2006
Exactly.
was not good enough for my father. So I missed the first quarter of Ohio State Michigan in 2006.
That was a great game too.
It was
That
a
was
fantastic
a great game.
So I got back for it. I should have known better because I should have anticipated the conflict of interest between any rational human and my dad with Notre Dame football. So just kind of a funny story that I always equate with that Notre Dame Michigan game. And I have a feeling this year he'd be fully invested in this game, and I'm sure if he's watching us from above, he'll be cheering for the Buckeyes for me and obviously for you. So
Absolutely.
let's go through the college football rankings real quick. You texted me the other day. You were omniscient and you had a real great thought there about the only real change: Florida State dropping to 5, Washington going up to 4. What are your thoughts on that, and why'd you think that was going to happen?
Once you found out that the quarterback, the dynamic quarterback from Florida State was going to be out, now you're like, okay, I don't know how that team works, and taking that, what that team's going to look like. And then when you start looking at what Washington was able to do, you can make a strong case for why they should leapfrog Florida State. Now, Florida State still has their own pathway to control their destiny. If they win out, they're going to go play Louisville in the ACC championship. But just with that injury, and then you look at strength of schedule of the ACC, and their opponents, you really could make a case that Washington had a better resume. When you look at what Washington was able to do, they beat number 8 Oregon, and then they ended up beating 3 other top 25 teams, and then coming back in, and then until they got it was crazy because I want to make sure I say this right with them, right? So when you look at what Washington was able to do, here's their victories, right? They played a lot of good teams, and so I just shake my head and be like, okay, like, you look at them, right? You come in, you start out, you come in, your big win is Oregon. So they're number 8, and then you come back and you beat USC. They're ranked 20. And then you come back the following week and you beat Utah. They were ranked 18. And then you come back the following week and you beat number 11 Oregon State. So you've got 3 top 25 wins in a row and a top 10 win. There's not too many people on that top 5 right there that can say they have 3 top 25 and 1 top 10 victory. And so you could make a strong case for Washington. Now people are going to say they survived, and yes, they did. That's the name of the game at this stage, is survive and win and advance. Survive and advance. That's the name of the game. And so they're going to go and play in the Pac-12 championship. They still have a Washington State that they got to play this weekend. So, they've got one more Pac-12 game, and then which we think they should win. Now, if they happen to struggle or lose, you can make a case that if Florida State comes in and look great, they can bump them because they've got Miami this week, or Florida this week, right? Florida. So there's going to be room. And then obviously the game this week between my Buckeyes and the Wolverines. So you're going to have whoever loses that game is going to drop. Now, how far they drop, I don't know. But that's why I love rivalry weekend. And so this is going to be interesting. But I was not shocked. I was not surprised that they made the move. You could, I was listening to those guys talk about it. You can make the case that you could have moved Washington up to 3. You could have moved them up to 2. Sure. They definitely have, when you look at strength of schedule, they have a stronger strength of schedule than my Buckeyes. But I didn't think they would move them that much. So I was okay with them moving Washington to 4. I didn't think you would see any movement between the top 3 teams because 2 and 3 play this week. So that'll shake out itself. You don't have to move that. And Georgia clearly looked like the best team in the nation. So
they're a steamroller.
They
right
look
now.
like the best. They roll.
Yeah,
they're playing great football right now.
For sure. My upset pick, I really liked the Beavers in that spot last week. But after like the first quarter of the game, I'm like, man, Penix, boy, he is just, he's fearless with the ball. B, their receivers are just difference makers. He throws them open, but they also make plays, one-on-one in the rain. They out physicaled Oregon State. And I really thought that was going to be a tough spot for Washington. And I came away, that felt like that was almost a more impressive win to me than the Oregon game. Oregon game was a shootout, kind of like pinball back and forth. This game, you went on the road, you were in the rain against, your in-state rival who hates your guts. And you didn't just win in a shootout. You really kind of out physicaled them. And, kind of took the game over. They've done this. They did the same thing to Utah. Like, they've won in a number of different ways. And I'm really hoping that Oregon beats Oregon State this weekend, because I really want to see that rematch next week, Washington, Oregon, like that. Tremendous. Like hopefully that's the Pac-12 championship. I'd be disappointed if it was anything else. Looking at the top 4 there, it's interesting with Florida State. Their path, even though they lost their quarterback, their path is probably still the easiest of all the teams. They have to beat, Florida, and then they're going to have to beat Louisville in the ACC championship. It makes being number 1 even more important, because they'll probably be 4 if they do get in. And boy, I'd much rather play them without Jordan Travis than anybody else in that top 4. So, if your team is able to run the table the next 2 weeks, you become a pretty big Alabama fan in the SEC championship, right? Just number 1.
You're rooting for Alabama because I want chaos. Like I said, I love chaos, right? So whoever wins this week, 2 and 3 controls their destiny, because whoever's 2, or if that team at North wins, they jump to 2. If Ohio State wins, which I'm not going to jinx or say we should, like, I'm just going to say if Ohio State wins, they stay 2. And now you're looking at, okay, what happens with Alabama, Georgia in the SEC championship? If Georgia loses that game, they're going to go to 4. Like, there's the committee's not going to not put them in. And so now it's looking like, okay, whoever's in the victor of ours, and we win the Big Ten championship, they go to 1. And then you're looking at, okay, look, if Washington runs the table, they go to 2. Alabama is now in because of the default factor, and then you
Yep.
probably will put Georgia in at 4, and you see a whole bunch of people looking at the outside end. So that's where you're kind of like, all right, and then does a one-loss Alabama team leapfrog of Florida State in the ACC? Yeah, or does a
Yeah.
one-loss Georgia team who doesn't win their conference, if that was the chaos factor, do they jump? Because you want to see them. Like, there's no way the committee leaves them out. And so that's where you're looking like, okay, this is, and I like chaos. So I would
Yep.
love to see
This
some things like that play out. I would
and
love to
this is
see
the
it.
this is the last year of the of the 14 playoff. So I'd like to
Right.
see just a total shit show. Like whatever is
Yeah.
the most chaotic way to end this, because I've hated this system all along. And going to 12 next year, if you're the 12th or the 13th or the 14th team, even though you might have a gripe, it's like, okay, whatever. It's not
Right.
nearly as big of a deal as 4 or 5. So this is really kind of it for chaos in college football. Like this whole era of, oh my God, can you lose one? Can you lose whatever? Like, next year we're going to be debating if Oklahoma gets in or Notre Dame gets in, or, Penn State or LSU, 2-3 loss teams might even, have a shot to make the playoffs. So this is really it. So if there's some college football gods, hopefully the next 2 weeks provide us with just as much chaos as possible. It's just some other interesting games this weekend. This is obviously rivalry week in college football.
Yes.
And all of the interstate, in-state games. The Thanksgiving game, I've always enjoyed the Egg Bowl, Mississippi and Mississippi State. And funny enough, my buddy Sammy, shout out to him, and I we were watching Elijah Moore, the Jets receiver on Sunday, and famously he was the one in the Egg Bowl a couple of years ago who got the personal foul penalty for pretending to be a dog and peeing in the end zone. And then they missed. You got the 15-yard penalty, and then they missed the extra point to tie the game, and the coach got fired. So he's always the topic of conversation anytime he comes up. Just for his, that was like the most famous Egg Bowl moment. There's just a bunch of like
hilarious.
fun. Yeah, you remember that? Like he crawled in the end zone and lifted his leg, and then they took the 15-yard penalty and the extra point. And I'm like, man, this kicker's going to miss this extra point, and this is going to end up being a tragedy. And sure enough, and then the coach got fired the next day. Like what a life-changing event for some of those coaches. Some of the other fun.
I appreciate you for costing my job. Thank you very much.
Costing you, your family, all the assistant coaches, like that. That was brutal. I enjoyed the Friday games. Obviously, there's an NFL game for the first time on Black Friday. And it's a big one for the people around here, the Jets and the Dolphins. But there's always a couple fun Friday games. The TCU Oklahoma game, and Missouri, who's playing about as well as anybody in college football. They're playing Arkansas. Well. And then the big game nationally, the team that's still kind of quietly in it, Texas Tech and Texas. Texas needs to win, needs to hold serve.
Texas has to win to stay where they are, because they still have a good chance of, if all things fail and you get the right losses, they could jump, because they're still ahead of Oregon.
And then Oregon State and Oregon is at 8:30 Friday night, which is great game. So Friday is packed. And then obviously Saturday is noon Saturday. Does that not have an iPad for you?
That's always been that game time. So
right. So no iPad, right? No second screen.
That'll be on the big TV. That'll be all that I'm watching. There will be no other game that I'm looking at. Then I'll watch the ticker.
No second screen. I won't text you about Louisville against Kentucky or LSU against Texas A&M. It's who cares. After your game is obviously the Iron Bowl.
Yes.
Auburn is a mess. They paid New Mexico State $1.4 million for the privilege of beating them last week, which I always find hilarious when a team, pays another team over $1 million to come in, and then that team not only takes your check but then beats you. I always
can't
find
have that loss. Like, that's just
brutal.
Okay, you're walking like, we're about to get steamrolled by Alabama. So, and I expect that to happen. Just Alabama rolls, they roll early. It's not even going to be one of those. It's not one of the games that you think about in this series. This is just going to be a blip, because Auburn is just a little down.
It's unfortunate, because that's always like when they're good, when Auburn is good, that's an amazing game. There's obviously Cam Newton, and then the kick six game in 2013. And that's always one of my favorite games of the year. And it would be an amazing follow-up to, the game at noon, but I don't see how that's going to be close. I'm going to probably watch Washington State, Washington at 4. That's really the only other relevant game, kind of in that window after the Ohio State Michigan game. And then I got to talk to you about this, Marlon. My Fighting Irish, Okay, so let's do two things here. First of all, they beat Wake Forest last weekend. The offense looked like how the offense should have looked all year.
Season
Frustrating.
long. All year.
Frustrating.
Yeah.
Threw the ball down the field. Playmakers showed up. We got to talk about this though. They're on the Pac-12 network, Marlon, Saturday night at 7 p.m. It is the last ever broadcast of a football game on the Pac-12 network because there's going to be no Pac-12 next year. Notre Dame Stanford got relegated to the Pac-12 network, which is not even carried here locally on cable. Not good. Not great. My father would be having
aren't all Notre Dame games on Peacock though?
No, not Notre Dame home games are on Peacock because NBC has the rights to the Notre Dame home games. They actually just extended that contract through 2029. But if you notice, the Notre Dame road games are always on ABC or ESPN.
Yeah.
That's why you'll get Kirk Herbstreit or Chris Fowler, those guys, to do Notre Dame road games. So this road game is not on ABC. It's not on ESPN. It's on the godforsaken Pac-12 network at 7 p.m. on Saturday. I might skip this. I really, because I'd have to make an effort to watch it. It's really, truly an irrelevant game. They're going to play a quarterback who's not going to be there next year. So it's not even like I want to watch, the new guy who's going to be their quarterback next year. I might just catch the YouTube highlights, Marlon, afterwards. And that's a sad commentary. That's saying something,
okay.
Disappointing after the way the year started and where we were before the Ohio State game to be relegated to the Pac-12 network against a Stanford team that nobody cares about. And you had to basically beg to get into the Big Ten next year, right? Like I hate this rivalry for Notre Dame. I understand why they play Stanford. It never has much juice to me. I don't care. So yeah, kind of a dud of an ending to the season. And the late window Saturday night's not great. Florida State's playing Florida, and then Georgia, I'm sure, is going to beat Georgia Tech by about 70.
But
nothing really. Yeah, they should. Nothing really exciting late, which is kind of disappointing with how many great football games there are. Starting on Thanksgiving and then Friday and then Saturday.
That's true.
I
might take Iowa State on the upset of K-State. I'm just gonna go ahead and throw it out there now. That's my upset.
I like that. How emotionally drained will you be, win or lose, at 4:00 on Saturday?
I won't be that emotionally drained. I'm invested now. It's fun, but I'll be good to go. Win or lose, she's like, all right, well, we lost or we won. Like that's it. As a former player, I don't get as emotionally tied. Like, oh my gosh, like I don't live and die by every win or loss. Like I was as a player. Like if I lost a game as a player, like don't be around me, don't talk to me, don't say anything to me. I needed time to kind of just calm down and just let me be for a little while, and then we could probably catch up a little later, maybe. If not, we would catch up the next day. But as a fan now, you're just like, man, I'll get a whole bunch of text messages and some tweets and some messages like, what happened to you? Like if we're on the losing end, then I get a whole lot of, what's up with your boys? I told you your boys weren't that good. And one of my former teammates, Damaris Johnson, whose nephew is Will Johnson, who plays for that team up north, number 2, who's a pretty good corner. And I was pushing hard for him to go play at Ohio State. And he ended up staying. He's from Detroit or from that area. So it made more sense for him to go and stay home and stay where he was. But yeah, like I'll get some text messages from him, like for certain. If they win that game, he'll text me. Some other friends that I know that are that team up north fans will text me and be like, hey, 3 years in a row, because that's what I'm going to hear. Like 3 years in a row. So, and then we'll see how it plays out. I think the brass at the house, they'll make a decision because this is the game that really decides your future with the organization. And so they don't take too kindly to, having 3 losses in a row. So we'll see what happens there. But I clearly think that you'll see a different Ohio State team on Saturday. So it's going to be very interesting. And I think you'll see a more physical team. And I think they're peaking at the right moment. So I'm looking forward to what this matchup brings. And then let's set it on the field.
Why do you think that someone like you has a more balanced perspective on this game, on NFL games from your former team, than some fans who were never really truly a part of it? I'm always struck by that. Guys like you, former players, guys like Don, people who worked in the building. It even rubbed off to me in a lot of ways. I think the closer you are to it at one point, kind of the less you're on that roller coaster after the fact. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's true. Like I think as a player, and I wasn't always as calm as a player. I think once I got a little older, and once I realized that I played better when I was able to regulate my emotions and kind of make sure I understood like don't get too high, don't get too low, just kind of stay focused on one play at a time. So I still kind of take that approach with everything. Like, listen, I'm not going to get too high. Now I'll sit like, come on, like you get frustrated as a former player and a fan now of like, man, he's got to make that play, but when it's all said and done, I'm just like, hey, listen, that's their path that they have to walk. And I've been there. I understand how it feels. I understand, playing everything back in your head over and over. Like if I had made this block, I could have done that. If I had made this play, I could have done that. If I had stripped the ball here, you go back and replay that over and over in your head. So I understand what those guys are going through, having been in their shoes. So I don't really get to that state anymore. I'm just kind of like, listen, I understand what you're going through. So I'm kind of like, look, game's over. I'm on. I'll be cheering you on regardless. Doesn't matter. Like
Sure.
you could be 0 for, and I would still cheer and be like, I bleed scarlet and gray. So for me, it doesn't matter anymore because I'm not settling it on the field. And so I have that perspective. I don't play. Like I'm not putting pads on to settle it. Like I'm cheering these young men on, and you get to see them when they make their best plays, and we get to see them when sometimes they make a not so great play, and sometimes you're like, that's the worst play that guy's ever played. Or he might have had his worst game ever as a collegiate. And you're just like, you know what? I understand because I've been in your shoes. So I'm not going to hold you, beat you up for it. I'm just going to tell you that I'm here for you. I support you. I believe in you. And let's go whatever bowl game we go play in. And even if whether we make it or don't make it into the college football playoff, I'm still going to watch it. Like I'll
It
still
would
be
be
there
really
cheering, ready
it
to
would be
go.
really refreshing. It would be really refreshing if everybody had that perspective. Unfortunately, they don't. And like I said, from the fan point of view, I see, and a lot in college athletics, probably even more so than most NFL cities. Maybe not the one we're in, but most NFL cities, people love their team, but it doesn't
Right.
ruin their Sunday or their Monday or their Tuesday. I have a feeling that this Ohio State Michigan game, the loser of this game, there will be people who it will ruin, a day, 2 days, a weekend, the week, whatever. And that just always kind of nobody loves football more than me, but man, like, I don't know. I appreciate your perspective. And I think once you realize how hard it is and what it takes, what those guys have been doing and putting on the line and how difficult it is and what a process it is, I think you just come to more of the appreciation that, win or lose, it's hard. It's hard to do.
It really is hard.
It's hard to do.
That's why I'm like, I'm going to cheer. I'm not going to be critical like that, and I'll agree. People like, hey, he should have made that play. Absolutely should have made that play. Like
Sure.
that's why he's going to be on Sundays, and we expect him to make those plays, but never be overly critical, never talk down about anybody. Like that's not how I am. And everybody's entitled to their opinion. So I don't mind when people speak their opinion as long as it's just not derogatory, as long as it's not just demeaning and you're like, well, that guy sucks. No, he doesn't suck. You just caught him at his worst moment. And we've all had a bad moment, whether it's in life, whether it's at work, whether you said something to your significant other that you like, man, I never should have said that, and so it's tough. So I have that perspective because I've been there when you like, hey, you've caught me at my lowest moment where I've made probably the worst mistake of my career at this moment, and you want to pile on me. Like, no. So I'm not. I've had that happen. So I understand. Like, no, I'm not gonna. I would never be that type of person to pile on to somebody because I know what you're going through. I know how they would feel. Like, I've been on I made the mistake and it cost you a game, or it cost you a touchdown, and you feel like you were the reason why you lost it. If you had made your play, things would have been different. So I've been there before. I know what that looks like. So that's just my approach. But again, I like to read the comments. It's fun, and then I let it go. Like I don't respond.
Sure.
I don't respond, but I'll read comments.
Yeah.
I'll read Twitter. Like, okay, I just scroll down. Like, I probably should stop because I'm gonna get off of this now.
It's easy for like 58-year-old Jim from Columbus, who's like weighing 3 bills, to be real critical of a defensive back, missing a tackle or whatever in a split second in front of 110,000 people. I just, again, being on the sideline, never playing myself, but being that close to the action and seeing and learning what it takes to be there, I could never be as critical as the guy in row 72. and saying you suck or whatever. I mean, you can get as frustrated as possible, and the mental errors and the coaching errors bother me.
Yeah.
In a football game much more so, because that to me seems like something that you can work on and is correctable, and that's more for the week and preparation,
Yeah.
more so than a bang bang. Even like last night's Monday Night Football game, like Marquez Valdez-Scantling. How can I criticize him for running 4-5 down the field, trying to catch a ball? Mahomes throws 65 yards in the air in the pouring rain. I would have never even gotten down there, let alone, be in a position to catch it. So, who the hell am I? Even though he's getting paid a lot of money, it's still, you can be frustrated and angry, but
Right.
to go after these kids, that's where I hope that people keep the game in some kind of perspective, because it's cliche, but it is a game.
Yeah, it's a game, and but I will say that's also, I think that's probably the best thing that Ohio State prepared me for, getting ready to the next level, because you do get that. You'll get fans that will come in and say things to you. You'll get the Twitter trolls that'll say things to you, and so it depends on how you respond to it, right? Like, and so when you talk to players, like, listen, don't scroll down. Like, you can be critical, and fans are gonna be critical, and sometimes rightfully so. Like, yeah, you have to play better. If you come here, there's a standard of play that is expected, and there's a level of success that you have to achieve as a player, as a coach, as a staff together, as a cohesive unit. And so you understand that you put that on there, and when you don't live up to those expectations, there's a bullseye that comes along with that. You'll get written about in the local media. You'll get talked about on 4, 6, and 10, which are the local stations there. So all those things happen, but it's a way, if you do it right and you take it all as a learning experience and take it all as like, listen, there's highs, there's lows. You just gotta focus and fight through it. When you don't play well, learn from your mistakes, because you're not going to be perfect, and that's where good coaching comes into play. Having a good network of people around you that can pick you up and kind of get you. Your play doesn't dictate who you are. You're not that person, no matter what. And so if you have the right support structure, they'll be okay. I think when you don't have the right people around you, or when you're trying to go solo, you see those guys that make the wrong comments in the paper and say the wrong, like, okay, that just tells me they don't have the right network and the right support people around them. And so they need to get different people in their ear telling them, like, this is not how you handle it. This is what you do. And you can't do it alone. Like, you can't fight alone. Like, you fight with the guys on the field. You fight with the guys in the locker room. Like, that's who you go and you turn and you bond with when you're at your lowest point. And so I think that was probably the best thing, when people are like, well, how was it? Like, large crowds, always being approached by media. Like, if you go to a school like that, you're prepared to handle what is going to come at you at the next level. So it never really bothered me once I kind of understand why that
Sure.
kind of that proving ground that you have to go through that. I think sometimes we forget as fans, when you think about it and you think about the person that you become, there is a level of, you have to make a mistake. There's a level of a low point that you have to have in order for you to then rise and become even more mentally stronger and figure out how to overcome that battle and overcome those setbacks. And so sometimes when we think it's just something that's bad, that's where you're like, man, I don't know what happened with this guy. Like, this guy's a different player. It's because he had to go through a low point. And sometimes the low point is just in the biggest stage of the game, where you're like, man, he's got to make that play. And so sometimes as fans, we forget that, because we've all had that experience of where we've gotten at our lowest and we had to figure out how to overcome it. We had to get a family member or a good friend to pull us out of, like, no, this is going to make you better and stronger. And so that's what I love about football and being a team sport, is regardless of what happens on Sunday, you're going to have guys that play really good. You're going to have some guys that play okay. You're going to have some guys that just didn't play their best. And hopefully they all learn from that and figure out how to become better. And for some of them, that journey will end, because that'll be the last time in that series they play. And then for some guys, like, hey, I can get it, and I can go back and make up for my lack of plays or lack of whatever I feel like I didn't do well the following season at home in the horseshoe. And so that's where I love college football, because you can still kind of, like, we love a good redemption story in college football. I love to see it, and so that's where this game, there's going to be some guys that are going to be like, he's a scapegoat. He's this, he's that, he's this. And there's going to be some guys like, yep, he's everything we thought he was. He performed magnificent.
Yeah.
And there's going to be some guys like, he didn't understand the moment. Like, sometimes when you're young, you don't understand, what that looks like, or even how you should play in that game. And so those are guys that I'll be having my eyes on, because there's going to be the guys that will get a couple more years that we can watch, and we get to see how they grow in this game. But for someone like Marvin Harrison Jr., this is more than likely the last time that he will fight and have this battle and this rivalry going. So I'm interested to see how he plays and how Kyle McCord plays. And so I'm just looking forward to those guys and what they do on Saturday.
Two more before we leave. Was the win your senior year your most memorable win of your college and pro career? Was it the most
Probably
meaningful win?
probably one of the most meaningful wins in my collegiate career, just because of the way the season set up. Like there were so many high expectations. We just underachieved, like just putting it bluntly and mildly, not even mildly, just putting it bluntly. We just underachieved. We didn't play well. We were kind of all over the place. And for me, I think I shared some of the things that were going on with me personally during that
Yep.
season, and losing my aunt and really playing for all the wrong, like trying to play for the NFL and not realizing, because when you think your childhood dream is right at your fingertips, you kind of forget like why. And I think I came back and said, okay, this is my why. Like, why do I play this game? Like, why am I even here? Like, why did I choose to come to Ohio State? And I was able to go back and reset. And so once I kind of realized, like, man, like I then really, after you look back and you had a few years to think about it, you like, I really appreciate everything that I went through. I wouldn't have changed anything. Like that senior year and the way we played out, and we ended up losing a few games that we probably should have won, and lost some close games. That was everything to me, because it made me a better player. It made me a better person. But yeah, that was the game that we wanted to win, because that was my last chance. I was like, I need to come out of here. I didn't want to go out and say I was a part of a class that never beat that team up north. And so, and Coach Cooper took a chance on me. He brought me in as a player and said, we want you. And so, he hadn't had any success yet against them. And so it was really like, we want to be a part of that group that helps them do that. And so, yeah, so I was able to get that victory in as well.
Was the junior year loss, was that the worst loss of your college or pro career?
That was, yeah, I would say, especially when you think about that's the series and the magnitude and what it was this game, and they whitewashed it. It was 28-0 that game. Like they literally, like they kept us out of the end zone. They did what they wanted to do on the ground. We stopped them sometimes, but realistically, they ran the ball over us. They ran the ball well. Tyrone Wheatley, big running back, and so it was just one of those games. Just like, man, like when you think about it and you think like in the series of it, like they beat us 28-0, and we were ranked probably the fifth team in the country. Like we should have definitely played better. Like, you hate to lose, especially you hate to lose a game like that. Like if you're going to lose a game in that series, it's got to be like 17-13, or
Sure.
a 17-14 game and they kick a field goal late to win it, because that's what you want to see. You don't mind, you hate losing that game, but you don't mind something like, all right, listen, we fought
you were
hard,
competitive.
you were competitive, kept out of the end zone. Like that was one of the things you think like, man, like if I could go back and change anything, like I would definitely like change how that game played out.
Sure.
And just like, listen, we need to play better. We need to come here and do some things. But it was all part of that maturation process that you have to have. And then you just kind of see how it's different, how different coaches approach it, and you understand what the mental toughness that you need to have to play in that game. And I think that was the difference sometimes. Like I just think like mentally we made too many errors to be successful. We would start and then shoot ourselves in the foot. And then whereas they were just kind of like, you know what, we're going to go ahead and they capitalize. And so I think that was one of the biggest things. Like they definitely had a better game plan sometimes mentally to deal with the pressures of being in that game and the magnitude of that game.
It's funny how those two games, 30 years later, are still so meaningful for you. And I just think to myself, whatever happens on Saturday, some two dudes 30 years from now might be doing some kind of VR podcast or whatever in the world technology looks like then about this game Saturday. It's kind of crazy to think about. It's kind of crazy to think about how 30 years from now, two guys playing in that game will, sit down and talk about, what it was like and how meaningful it was. And the fact that, in your career, your great career, both college and in the NFL, like those two games were at the top of the list, of wins and losses. So it's wild to think about what this game means, as a player, as a coach, certainly for the coaching staffs of both teams, and obviously the fans. Yeah. So we're going to leave it there for now. This is going to post on Wednesday morning. Hopefully everybody has a really happy Thanksgiving and enjoys the football on Thanksgiving. We're going to be back Friday morning with Jay Remersma, former Michigan, I can say it, tight end, and Buffalo Bills tight end, and former teammate of Marlon's, and Heartthrob, which I will share the story with him about his appearance at a Bills Christmas party with one of my friend's girlfriends and how much she was looking forward to meeting him. So look forward to that. And any final thoughts here, Marlon?
Just thank you to everyone who, when we're talking about being close to Thanksgiving, make sure you have a wonderful Thanksgiving with all your families and friends. But I'm just thankful for all of you that has taken time out to listen to our show. So thank you for getting on this college football bandwagon with us. And thank you to Cover One for hosting us on their platform. And if you like what you hear, definitely please like and subscribe.
Yes,
but definitely
absolutely.
just being grateful this time of year. And I'm just grateful that I get to do this great podcast and this fun podcast with my friend Josh over there. So thank you. And I'm just looking forward to talking to Jay on Friday. It's going to be interesting to talk about the game, the rivalry.
Absolutely. We're going to get the other side of things. We're going to get the other side of things here. Maybe show that. Maybe show that not all of them are evil. All right. We'll see everybody on Friday. Take care.